There's a couple major Nintendo Switch stories we have to talk about today, starting with some bad news that has appeared online for Nintendo and their bottom line following the announcement of the official delay of Breath of the Wild 2 to the year of 2023. Then the big talking point for today's video has to do with Nintendo Switch Online and the reason why fans are on high alert this week for an update to appear, and this could happen as soon as tomorrow and bring new games. What's up, Nation? If it's your first time on the channel, make sure you join Sunbro Nation by subscribing below, hit the like button on this video if you enjoy it today, and make sure you turn on your bell notification icon so you're kept up to date with all the newest gaming news. Now, as I mentioned, guys, we got a couple big different stories to dive into today, and we have to kick it off with a conversation that is really a follow-up from yesterday's major announcement that I don't think anybody was anticipating to drop on a random Tuesday morning, and that, of course, was the official announcement that Legend of Zelda Breath of the Wild 2, or the sequel to Breath of the Wild, whatever you want to call it at this point, we still don't have a title, has been officially delayed until spring of 2023. And with that, we have some new trickle effects that have happened from that announcement, most notably with Nintendo's share price right now, as it has apparently dropped 6% since the announcement. And I want to have a quick discussion on what this really means, and also talk about some of the speculation online that's flying around right now that a lot of people are covering, saying that maybe Breath of the Wild 2 is actually planned to launch alongside of a new Switch model, and what that would mean for the overall stock price going forward for Nintendo and just their revenue performance and growth overall. And so to kick off this conversation, I do want to quickly hop over to VGC, where they have an article typed up with the details and the reaction around this Breath of the Wild 2 delay when it comes to Nintendo's financial bottom line. Nintendo shares dropped 6% following Zelda Breath of the Wild 2 delay. Its shares had gained 25% year-to-date prior to Tuesday's announcement. Nintendo shares fell 6% in Tokyo trading on Wednesday on the back of the news that Legend of Zelda Breath of the Wild 2 has been delayed. The platform holder announced on Tuesday that the highly anticipated Nintendo Switch sequel, which was previously scheduled to arrive in 2022, will now be released in spring 2023. Prior to Wednesday's slump, Nintendo shares had gained 25% year-to-date, Reuters reported. Surikan Todo, CEO of Tokyo-based games industry consultancy Kantan Games, said the strength of Nintendo's upcoming release schedule meant this was as good of a year as any to delay the game. Nintendo Switch Sports will release in April, ahead of Splatoon 3 this summer, Xenoblade Chronicles 3 in September, and Pokemon Scarlet and Pokemon Violet in late 2022. If there's a year Nintendo can afford to push Zelda out of it, it's this year, Toto said. The fiscal year hasn't even started yet, and they have spread out all of these potential blockbuster titles. So first off, as a Zelda fan that is extremely hyped for the release of Breath of the Wild 2, obviously I'm disappointed we have to wait longer. That said, 2022 is by all accounts a stacked year, and I'm still expecting some unannounced titles that we haven't even heard about yet to be dropped at something like the E3 Direct, and then potentially even a surprise game or two in the September Direct that could still hit this year. So to the article's point, if there ever was a year that Nintendo could afford to push back the Zelda Breath of the Wild blockbuster title, the sequel, that is, it is this year for sure. And so I am on the same page with that. If they need the extra development time, that's perfectly fine. It is an interesting talking point around how big of a deal this is to Nintendo investors, that when something like Zelda Breath of the Wild 2 gets delayed, the stock price actually plummets because they know that the big revenue gains will not take place in this year and instead be spring of next year. So I guess there's different tactics with things. I won't claim to be an expert in the stock market, but apparently, they want to pull out their money now and then potentially reinvest it in a time that's closer to this giant blockbuster game's release. And I do think that this is also an interesting topic to point out of the power that Zelda Breath of the Wild 2 has in terms of if Nintendo did decide to launch new hardware alongside of it. God forbid if they launched it with a special edition Breath of the Wild sequel special edition, like good luck finding that thing, and that would unfortunately be like a scalper item galore. And if you didn't get it on original drop, I don't even know how you would come across it at a reasonable price point. But in terms of whether or not we will see something like the new Switch hardware launch alongside Breath of the Wild 2, I do think that if there was ever a window to launch new hardware, just hit the reset button and do exactly what you did to push the Switch off to a fantastic start in 2017, and do the same thing in 2023 in the same window that is the spring window, and launch it alongside your new blockbuster Zelda game. Like, yes, that will move hardware. Yes, if it is somehow being able to support DLSS technology and upscale to 4K display when in docked mode, that will be a game changer for Zelda fans, and I think that's the move that gets the entire base model Switch camp that chose not to upgrade to the OLED, especially if they didn't play in handheld mode very much, to actually trade in their Switch or just go out and buy that new Switch altogether, especially because that would kind of send the message that the Switch is indeed in the halfway point of its life cycle, or is at least here to stay for a few more years. Now, maybe this is just the true next gen, or maybe it is that mid-step refresh. Like, that's all up for debate and speculation. I don't claim to know which one it is, but there is a lot of smoke around 4K games and the Nintendo Switch, and it definitely could be happening in the spring window of 2023, as you want to launch brand new hardware alongside of something that gets people in the stores to begin with, and that is clearly Breath of the Wild 2. It's clearly tied to a huge stock drop when Nintendo announced their delay for this game, so whether or not we see it happen, I don't know, but I would definitely say it's plausible that Nintendo could be planning some kind of hardware refresh or even the next gen version of the console around that spring 2023 window, but we will have to wait and see. I do want to hear from you guys in the comments down below how you feel overall now that we've had a little bit more time to process the delay announcement of Breath of the Wild 2. Are you super let down and disappointed, or are you kind of like the mindset of me that 2022 is already going to be a great year, and really, since it was a end of 2022 game and now it's a spring of 2023 game, it's not that much longer to wait. Not to mention, the hopes are kind of somewhat back in my eyes for some kind of announcement around either Wind Waker HD or Twilight Princess HD being ported over to the Switch, so that's the one highlight. If it doesn't happen, I won't be heartbroken, but I do think that this is the window now that we can maybe expect Nintendo to give us some kind of holdover game while we are waiting for this release. So I look forward to hearing from you guys on all things Zelda Breath of the Wild 2 delay and your thoughts on the new Switch revision launching alongside of it in the comments down below. Now, the other story we're talking about today is an exciting one if you are a Nintendo Switch Online subscriber, whether that be just the base tier or the expansion pack tier, as it has been spotted online that there is maintenance scheduled for both the NES app and the SNES app. And normally when Nintendo schedules maintenance, especially for both apps, it probably means we're getting new games. Of course, take it with a grain of salt. It could be just a maintenance update in terms of performance, but I think that's highly unlikely in this case, considering both of the apps are scheduled to receive an update tomorrow, and that also means we don't have to wait long to see if this is real or not, because it will be happening by tomorrow. So we'll know for sure very quickly whether or not Nintendo is going to continue the support with NES and SNES games, which I definitely think they need to, and they can't forget about the base tier subscribers that are still paying for that service and then continuing to add value, whether you're a base tier subscriber or an expansion pack subscriber, to NSO overall. So to kick off this conversation, let's quickly hop back to VGC, where they have a detailed breakdown of what has been spotted and then discuss what games we might actually see launch as part of this update. So let's quickly read through this article together. Nintendo could be preparing to add new NES and SNES games to Switch Online. Upcoming maintenance suggests new titles could be added on Thursday. Nintendo could be preparing to add more titles to its NES and SNES libraries on Nintendo Switch Online. According to the Nin Status Bot Twitter account, a profile that tracks Nintendo's maintenance windows both for the NES and SNES apps will go down for maintenance on Thursday morning between 55 and 2 UTC. Nintendo often takes its retro console apps down for maintenance when it adds new titles to them, suggesting it may make an announcement either today or on Thursday morning that more NES and SNES games are being added. The last time both apps went down for maintenance was right after the last Nintendo Direct, which resulted in the addition of Earthbound and Earthbound Beginnings to the service. The last time they received titles before that was back in July 2021, which also saw them both undergoing maintenance beforehand. Similarly, the N64 app received maintenance right before Banjo-Kazooie was added to the service on January 20th. So for someone like me who's really been very critical of Nintendo Switch Online overall, as there's still some very big missing features that I still think need to be added, such as voice chat, some kind of online trophy system or achievement system. When you unlock things, you can say they've kind of dipped their toe in with that with the missions and rewards feature, but it's not, tied to game achievements or unlocking extra things in games. There's still features I want from Nintendo Switch Online, and I also don't want to have to use a ridiculous smartphone app in the year of 2022 just to be able to talk to friends when you're online. I mean, that is a silly concept. Yes, I see people comment down below that Nintendo doesn't want to deal with online bullying and things. I totally get that, but there are parental controls on the console, and it would not be hard to lock voice chat behind an age gate if that is something that they would be concerned about. And they still have a phone app that has Nintendo branded behind it, so it's not like it really takes all the liability away from them regardless. I don't know where their mindset is on voice chat. We definitely need that, in this modern era, in my opinion, and I think the Switch is more than capable of being able to support it. It's just Nintendo, if they ever update or not, will remain to be seen. But this is definitely something that, while there are gaps in the service, we've definitely seen them do a better job over the course of time with kind of sticking to not really an exact update schedule, but at least not just entirely forgetting about portions of their service. As we read through, there was an entire 6-month gap in the updates of NES and SNES games, and that had me feeling pretty concerned, like, okay, they clearly think they've added enough to the library of these consoles, and they're just going to forget about any of the outlier games that are out there. And it does appear that we may be able to say that that isn't the case as soon as maybe this evening, later on after the video goes live, or maybe as soon as tomorrow. But I am definitely here for the more games, the better, in my opinion, and my tune is definitely changed with the value of expansion pack now that they've fixed all of the emulation issues, at least for the most part. Maybe not every last one of them, but they have come such a far way from what the state of the service was when it originally launched, with input lag, lack of fog, and all of those things. Like, they've really done a lot to make it better, and we are at least so far seeing them stick to one new N64 game per month, which is a win in my book. Even though I would like to have 2 a month, it's something that I'm okay with 1 a month. And the nice thing about N64 games is they are long enough, especially when you talk about Ocarina of Time, Majora's Mask, Banjo-Kazooie. Like, you can really get some lengthy gameplay sessions out of those, as opposed to some of the NES and SNES titles and even Genesis titles you can beat in one sitting, potentially, depending on which game you're playing through. So Nintendo can still do some things to make the service better, but this continued support for NES and SNES will absolutely be a win in my book, as we still need certain games that haven't hit the service yet, most notably Mario RPG, Legend of the Seven Stars. Like, maybe that's the announcement. That would be a huge win for people. I would definitely also love to see Turtles in Time make it to the service, but I don't think that that will happen due to the recent Ninja Turtles collection that we had announced. And I think that a lot of those games that are on collections maybe won't make it over as well. Like, I want the Mega Man X 1 through 3 games from the SNES to hit the service very badly, but Capcom is still selling a classic collection right now that supports those games, so of course it makes more sense to keep them separate from the service. But Nintendo could pay the money maybe and make it happen. There's also some one-off games that I have like super nostalgia for from the SNES era that I don't know how the licensing rights would work out, but I really enjoyed the Mickey Mouse games on the SNES, even Goof Troop, and then especially the Star Wars games. Like, I enjoyed all of those, and I don't know again how licensing and what they would have to clear to bring those back, but I would love to see those titles make it over as well. When it comes to NES games, I guess for me personally, I feel like they've attacked most of the library that I want to see on there, but I'm sure there's still some hidden gems or some games that I've forgotten about over the years that would be a nice addition to the service. So we have to wait and see for what's going to happen around the corner with NSO. At this point in the video, guys, I want to hear from you all personally on your thoughts and theories around this. What do you think about the earlier story that we talked about with Breath of the Wild 2 delay and the rumors of a Switch revision or new Switch hardware launching alongside of it? And definitely let me know which games you hope we see added into NES and SNES, and whether or not you think that is indeed what this maintenance schedule means, or if you think it's something entirely different and we're not getting new games at all. And definitely share with me your overall opinions on the state of Nintendo Switch Online in 2022 and what you want to see for the service going forward in the comments down below before you leave the video, as I do look forward to getting a back and forth conversation started with you all around these topics. Make sure you check out yesterday's video if you haven't already, where we discussed the big news around Zelda Breath of the Wild 2's delay and how it could create that open window, according to all of the rumors and reports that we saw around Wind Waker HD and Twilight Princess HD potentially coming to the Switch in 2021, and how that can now happen due to this delay. Also, make sure you like, subscribe, turn on your notification bell, and I will see you guys in the next video.